Hello and welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 268, where each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a comic, a movie, an anime, a TV show, an audio drama, all sorts of stuff. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and we talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you on
Yes.
this fine Sunday morning?
I'm doing well. It's National Cinema Day. Are you going to the theater for your
Oh.
$4 tickets?
I am not, but I went yesterday. For
Uh-huh.
I guess you could say my like $1 two tickets. I'd only have to pay for the convenience fee because I'm already paying them that subscription thing
Oh,
month. So
right.
yeah, I went to go see Gran Turismo.
Yeah, I'm doing that today. I was able to get 40x tickets as
Oh,
part of the $4 National Cinema Day promotion.
nice. That'll be interesting. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that because so as you know, I like to keep track of all of the stuff that I read and watch, and I have a big long
Mhm.
list. And as I'm going through, I mark all of the stuff that like this one was my favorite, whether it was like new to me or just new that year. I mark it with a little like fire emoji. Of
That's a
just like
good idea.
this one was fire. Hell yeah. Um, Surprisingly, I marked Gran Turismo. I was very surprised by this movie, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts. But I'll not say
Okay.
anything else except for I was very surprised.
All
But
right.
yeah, I'm excited. Good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, National Cinema Day, man. Yeah, I saw that they were having that promotion, but didn't think to see exactly what day it is. But I guess today, the 27th, man.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have Fandango and every local movie theater chain's app on my phone. So I got so
Mm.
many notifications and emails about this because I refuse to miss a deal on movie tickets. Because I don't have one brand loyalty. I cycle around. I got to visit all the local theaters. They each have
Sure.
their own special feelings and vibes for different movies. I've got one I go to for big blockbusters. I've got one I go to for horror because it's like it. You drive through more woods when you have to go to that theater.
Ah, yes. I
So
see.
I'm
I
surfing
see.
around and I always look out for the deals.
Good stuff. I'm gonna say, speaking of deals or going through scary forests or something like that, I don't think
Yeah.
they're good segues. But this week here on the review show is the start of a new monthly ongoing series. This one will last us through the end of the year. We don't do one in December, so through the end of November. Is when this one will take us to. But we are starting our journey reading Hellboy. Today we'll be talking about the first three volumes. And then I think it's three volumes each for the next 4 months here. So I'm super excited about that. Mike Mignola's Hellboy is something I've always enjoyed in theory because this is kind of a blind
Yeah.
spot in my comic book reading. I have a ton of comics. All my bookshelves are filled with comics and stuff like that. But Hellboy was one of those things of like even a it felt like even a decade ago when I kind of was starting to get back, I guess over a decade now, when I was starting to get back into comics. Hellboy felt daunting then, of just like there's a lot of it, or I'm not sure like what the reading order is, all that stuff. I know there's
Hmm.
some people who want you to read certain things first
Oh.
and stuff like that. And so I kind of shied away from it, being like, I'll get there one day. And I kind of never did. So I'm glad we're doing it here on the podcast, and I can just be like, all right, here we go, volumes 1 through 3. Let's start. And yeah, I'm excited. Melissa, I know you've seen the live action
Yes.
movies. Is that your totality of experience with Hellboy?
Yeah, my brothers are both big comics nerds who love Hellboy, so I hear a lot about it from them.
Cool.
My niece, when she was little, a little toddler, my brother gave her like little stuffed, chibi cute Hellboy and Abe toys to play with. She did like them. So the
That's
whole
fun.
family loves Hellboy and his friends.
Good stuff. Good
Like it's got
wholesome comics, right?
the
Right?
books have a really
Right?
distinctive art style. Like even not being a comics reader, if you've seen it once, you can always identify, oh, that's original Mignola Hellboy. I
Yeah.
have always been intrigued by them. I was happy when you proposed these as our next ongoing monthly series. Like I do enjoy the boys' company. Let's really get to know them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen all the live action movies. I know you and I did a spoiler cast for the newer live action one, which was, you know, it's fine. But I love
Middling.
those. Yeah, I really really enjoy those first two live action ones with Ron
Yes.
Perlman. I thought those were fantastic. I've seen one of the animated movies, I think.
Yes.
I don't really remember it because it was so long ago. But I
Yes. I know
remember
I've
kind of
also
enjoying that too.
I've seen my brother see it. I can't
Sure.
say I've seen it personally myself.
You saw about like 30 seconds of it when you walked in the
Right.
room and was like,
You're
oh,
like,
that's
oh, it's Hellboy.
Hellboy. And then walked
Yeah,
away. Yeah.
I know him.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into this because I know outside of what we are reading for these monthly specials, there's still a lot more Hellboy for us to eventually
Yeah.
get into one day. There's Hellboy in the BPRD. There's BPRD comics. There's Hellboy in Hell. There's Abe Sapien comics. There's Lobster Johnson comics. There's all sorts of stuff. Right? There's so much. Just like of Hellboy and the world he inhabits. So yeah, I'm excited to start talking about Hellboy. Melissa, now that you have read the first 3 volumes, what'd you think? What was your experience like?
These are a real vibe. I'm gonna tell you, I did not pay super attention to the stories. I was there for
That's
just
fair.
the artwork, the atmosphere, the experience of it all. I can't recount to you exactly what Rasputin was doing here or what he wanted, but Rasputin was here.
Yeah, he was indeed. Yeah, it's an interesting one because the first 2 volumes are story based. It's like Hellboy's origin, and then kind of we skip ahead to modern day times, and we get to see what he's up to now, and then Volume 3 is a collection of short stories that kind of jump around from time period to time period. So we've gotten a little bit of story, but not much. And knowing that Hellboy often has this like rich mythology of characters and they reference this one thing and then you get to read about it in this other comic over here and do all that stuff. I feel like, yeah, I'm just kind of along for the ride. I don't know if much has like stuck yet in terms of like, okay, here's the story, right? But we're getting there. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed these first 3 volumes. There's just it kind of surprised me to know that at least in volume 1 that John Byrne was working on the scripts for this. I kind of know John Byrne from his work on Superman in the
Okay.
post-crisis era of DC comics. But yeah, it's such a like in a weird way, it was deeper into all of the references that it was getting into. That's not the right way to say it. It like I feel like in one of the forewords to these comics in the volumes, they were talking about just like how much influences went into all of this stuff, right? You have
I can imagine so,
science, you have
yeah.
fantasy, you have Lovecraft, you have this, you have that, you have Jack Kirby over here, you have this, like all it goes all in. And I think they mentioned something along the lines of like in the hands of a lesser creator, it probably would have just read as references to those things. And it's like, oh, we checked off the box for this thing, or we checked off the box
Yeah.
for that thing. But what Mignola has created here, it just feels entirely new. The way he weaves in and out, it's like, okay, I mentioned something Lovecraftian, but then we're back
Yeah.
over here to Jack Kirby. Then we're over here to some Nazi science experiment, and like it just weaves in and out, and folklore and myth, and it feels new. It feels cohesive, even though he's
It
just kind of
does.
like this shotgun
Yeah.
of what all can we kind of pull in here. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the all the different folklore and cultural elements in this does feel very organic. Now, even when like Baba Yaga on her like chicken leg house shows up, nothing feels out of place. Everything feels like it could go here.
Yeah.
I
And
think that is real craft.
yeah, and I think especially like at the end of volume 2 when we're still barely into the story, and then we get this third volume of short stories. It just feels like right off the bat, Mignola has a sense of the world that he wants, the world that he has created. Like it doesn't feel like he's still trying to find his footing with this stuff, which I think is a huge accomplishment. So
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I didn't read the forewords because they hurt my eyes. Because I'm reading these on Comixology Unlimited, and it's very tiny, bright white text
you can
over a
zoom
black
in.
background. I I probably could have. I'm like, Kyle will read these and tell me what parts are important. If I had these on paper, I would read them. If
Yeah.
I remembered to go get like my blue light glasses, I probably would have read them. I just
Sure,
looked at
yeah.
it and I'm like, no. Let me go on to the
I
artwork. The
I
peaceful, dark artwork.
I only read the first two. I did not read the third one. I don't know why I just had to skip that third one. But the second one is by Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So there you go. Shout out to Alan Moore. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, do you have any other kind of like stuff that you wanted to say about that, or should we jump into the synopsis of these first two here?
There's not a person alive who cares less if you shout them out than Alan Moore.
Right, yeah. True.
We are ants
True.
to that man.
Indeed. But yeah, any other kind of Hellboy related stuff that you want to say, stuff about your experience before we get into a
I
quick plot synopsis?
I really enjoyed them. Yeah, I think they are. You can see very quickly like who Hellboy is and what he does and what his job is. I like that there is the backbone of I have a job. I work for an agency. I go out on these cases, on these missions, and it can feel sort of procedural, but in a good way, where you're
Hmm.
like, I don't. I put on if a person put on Law and Order SVU for background noise, they're like, I don't know what the deal is with this murderer, but I know Olivia Benson and like she's got him, and I can feel like that. I don't need to know the details of every different mythological monster and homunculi that Hellboy encounters. I know Hellboy. I know he's gonna solve it. I'm just along for the ride here.
Yeah. I think something else that I really enjoyed is I kind of already mentioned just how seamlessly he weaves through all of this folklore and mythology and stuff like that. But how like over serious some of these villains can be with their like religious almost book of revelation style like villain monologues, and how I just this whole thing just pulls you right back out. It's just like, just shut
Yes.
up already, like let me just
Right.
punch you, right?
He's a man of the people, Hellboy.
He really is, right? He's not engaging with them on that kind of vocabulary per se,
Yes.
even though he knows it and recognizes it, but he fits in with them just in the way he looks, his origin story, and he's just tired, right? He's just like, ugh,
Yes.
let me punch you and get this over with, please. I have a
Yes.
gun because I'm trying to be modern and just get this over faster, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, let's do a quick plot synopsis of these first couple volumes, and then we can go ahead and do some housekeeping and then dive into the books a little bit further. I think that'll be good. Good stuff. Okay, these books here. So, in volume 1, like I kind of alluded to earlier, we do get Hellboy's origin story. We pick up in the midst of World War II, and there's a group of Nazi scientists that are looking into some kind of occult ritual. And yeah, Rasputin is there with them, kind of leading them on. And they are trying to summon some kind of beast, some kind of demon. They're not sure exactly what's going to happen. They're just like, we're here to find out. We're fucking around and we're here to find out. And meanwhile, the allied powers are also trying to stop the Nazis. They have their own version of Captain America in this book, which I don't think I knew existed.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And yeah, they're kind of where they expected the Nazis to be, and they're not really there. But something still materializes in front of their eyes, and it's little itty bitty baby Hellboy. And he's
Truly
so
a boy.
cute. Yeah.
He is. I gotta say, I love Hellboy as a concept. You look at the drawing of the man, or like Ron Perlman playing him on screen or whatever. You just look at him and you know that his name is Hellboy. You're like, I have no further questions. I understand this completely. That's a Hellboy.
Exactly. Yeah, and so he is kind of taken in by, I'm terrible with names as usual. What's the doctor's name? Yeah, Dr. Broom. He's kind of taken into his care and raised up, and kind of, I guess, from a young age, trained to be a BPRD agent, which is an agency that goes to investigate the paranormal.
The Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense.
Yeah. And they are both like studying this stuff and destroying it in case like monsters are destroying certain towns, or the town has an outbreak of vampirism or something like that, right? They often have to end up fighting these monsters or destroying them or somehow covering it up. And that's kind of Hellboy in a nutshell.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
we get to meet Abe Sapien. We get to meet the usual gang here. And they start to go off on adventures. But in this third volume in particular, we do get a handful of adventures kind of in between what happens in volumes 1 and 2. And it's different stories about him. Like there's someone who needed help, and they're they say their baby is not who their baby usually was. What happened with my little child?
Usually.
Yeah, he changed. Something happened.
It's a changeling is the name of that creature.
Sure. And so Hellboy has to investigate and ends up on this quest to bury a dead guy at one of these churches around the area. Hilarity ensues, all of that good stuff. Or you have to like he's looking at like werewolves in a town that has been trying to keep a secret for a long time. Some real fun and interesting short stories here with these. But that's kind of it for these first 3 volumes. Did you want to add anything to that I kind of missed or glossed over?
He's Hellboy, and Hellboy's around.
Oh, so he's Hellboy. Got it. Thanks. I missed that. Now I understand.
There are sometimes when we read or watch something for this podcast where I engage with it on a surface level, not because it is not deep, but because I only have limited resources. Like I read a comic book like in bed before I go to sleep every night, and maybe I'm on my like last 20% of energy for my day before I go to sleep. So if I ever don't remember things or like reduce it to the barest concept, that's me, and that's not the story.
That's
The story is strong.
We've also just like scratched the surface here of Hellboy.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna have a lot more to say next month.
we have a lot to learn indeed, but that's kind of the purpose of this journey, right? We haven't read these. We only have a passing familiarity, and so we are discovering Hellboy. So good stuff. Good stuff indeed. Well, let's take a quick break for housekeeping, and when we come back, we will start diving into these comics a little bit more in depth here. So we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon-exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout-out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much, it means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right, and we are back. Once again, a big shout out to our Patreon supporters. We thank you a lot. We love you tons.
Thank you.
It means a lot. Over on the Pilots Club, our Patreon exclusive podcast, this past month we got to talk about Veronica Mars. But this month here in September, or I guess next month, this is end of August. But in September, we will be talking about winning time. Did I get the emphasis on the right word there? Winning time, not winning time.
Yeah, not winning time. Yes.
Winning time. This is the HBO, I guess, like, reenactment dark comedy. I don't know if it's actually a comedy. It's all about the Lakers in the 80s and their, like, rise to prominence, Magic Johnson, all that good stuff. But yeah, I've heard it's more comedic than you might expect, but it's also like it's not a documentary story, but it is a dramatization of that stuff. But I've heard it's funnier than you think it is.
We
I
gotta
don't know.
stop trying to describe Pilots Club concepts before we've actually watched the pilot.
Maybe they're intrigued now. They're like, "Oh, I thought this was like a serious sports documentary," and
You think you
you're
might
being
have
like,
heard something about what the tone is? I gotta listen.
the tone. It's different, man. It's good stuff. We have a blast on that show. That's the Pilots Club. Right here on the review show this past week, we got to talk about an audio fiction podcast called Mockery Manor, and we covered season 1 of that. It takes place in the late 80s, early 90s in this kind of horror-themed theme park, and it was a lot of fun. I actually started following Longcat Media, who made the show on all of our social medias. They started following us back, which was amazing. So thank you to them. I left them a nice note being like, "We had so much fun. Thank you. And now we're excited to check out more of your shows." So yeah, go check out Mockery Manor if you want some murder mysteries happening in a theme park.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. Over on the Captain's Log, we got to talk about our thoughts on Blue Beetle, Melissa's lonely voyage with the Demeter. She went to go see the last voyage of the Demeter literally by herself.
Yeah, not another soul in the theater. I saw like one disinterested person at the box office that entire night at the theater. That's the theater I'm going to today, so I'm really excited to see it livened up with a full National Cinema Day crowd.
Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff. And then over on the Reactor Horror, we still have our trailer reaction up to the Continental, the John Wick spinoff, the 3-part Peacock series, I believe. I think that's happening.
We still have it up.
Month here. It
didn't
still
go
up
back
there
in the vault.
Go check it out. Still there, guys.
Do you want to watch a reaction to an old trailer? Do you want to know what we thought of the trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? You still can.
Still there. Yeah, so I think that is about housekeeping for right now, which means let's get into spoilers. There we go. Spoilers for Hellboy. Melissa, where do you want to start with this? Was there something that stood out, a certain bit that you were like, I really enjoy this, or art that you were like, man, this is so good?
I want to talk about the concept of pulp. I look at this and I know it is pulpy, but I don't know how to define pulp. It's that pornography theorem where I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it.
Sure. Yeah. I think this goes right along with what we were talking about earlier. There's just so many influences, so many references. Because I thought the exact same thing as I was writing this. I was like, this feels like I'm on some kind of pulpy adventure. Sometimes the narration that Hellboy had was like, this feels like a noir detective story. This is interesting. This is fun.
And that's the flavor it has more than anything else. You keep describing it as an adventure. And I don't know if that's exactly, maybe we, the audience, are on an adventure, but I don't think Hellboy and his pals feel that way. They're just like, this is work. We got to go in. It's a case we have to solve. I'm angry that this wizard keeps monologuing. I just want to punch him with my big fist and get out of the spooky manor. Like, it is more matter-of-fact, procedural, and lends itself more to feeling like a detective story as opposed to like a swashbuckler or a treasure hunter.
Yeah, because he's often sent in to investigate, of just like, what is happening here at this town? right? And so he has to go and kind of take a look around and talk to people, be like, hey, what's going on here? What happened? And that, yeah, usually gives him a clue to go here to this other location, investigate the church, talk to this certain person who seems to be real shady, and then maybe he'll be like, but hey, I'm a demon. And they're like, oh no, a demon. I'm actually a werewolf. Now let's fight, right? So yeah, there is this like sense of mystery in all of these, which I know I really enjoy because I like crime stuff a lot. So
Yes.
this sense of mystery is just like, what is happening here? But pulpy stuff, like my like go-to example is like Doc Savage,
Yeah.
right? But even then, I think pulpy also kind of refers to the kinds of books, the kinds of
Yeah.
paper that it was printed on. This really cheap, like you can see the pulp in the paper.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just these kind of like not offbeat, but just kind of
Sensational.
readily
Like,
available too, right?
yes. Yeah.
Anyone could
Yeah.
kind of make
It's
them, so it wasn't
right.
necessarily a sign of quality. It's like, ooh, a new pulp
Yeah.
novel, right?
Right. Just flashy, accessible, sensational, very strong feelings. Like they're very scary or very lusty or very something. And just there to like grab at you.
Yeah. And I think this also has that just in the sensationalist kind of like, oh, there's Nazi experiments and this guy's brain is in a
Yes.
jar and now there's some
Right.
demon in a weird iron shoes or something like that, right? It's just like every page you turn feels like something new and exciting.
Yeah.
But the way that Mignola also like brings in just these very very dark inks, right? The like just lots of black, and then these not muted
No.
tones, but like it's not so bright a red that you're like, oh, that is like candy apple red, Ferrari red. You're like, no, that's
I
Hellboy red, right? It's darker.
yeah.
It's a
The
darker
the art
purple, darker brown, darker green. Yeah.
the art is the most outstanding thing about these books. It's so recognizable and like so consistently purposefully applied, but still like every chapter or so I'd like take a second and really look at it like this thing is wild. This is what the book looks like it never loses the effect that it has on you. It never gets like tired and familiar, like, right, big dark shadows, I know where are we going. Like the shadows are so consistently striking.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about too, speaking of these shadows, is that like inkers can ink their stuff in many different ways to give certain effects to these pages. And something I think about is when you see more of like a painterly style and you get to see
Yes.
some of the brush strokes, or even if it's like classic comics and you see the like little hatch marks coming
Yeah.
out of the shadows. It's meant to kind of give you a sense of volume or shading, like, or that like there might be something in those shadows, and it's neat to kind of interpret what you think is in these shadows. But these shadows that Mignola has here are just pitch black. Like there is
Yes.
not any kind of scratchiness or like brush strokes in them. They are just 100% black.
Yes, there's
And
no
to me, that's,
midtones. There's no
yeah,
transition points. It is light or it is dark.
which means in terms of lighting, that's it. Like it's really harsh, stark lighting. But to me, it almost makes those shadows scarier because you
Yes.
really have no idea what's in them.
Yeah.
You can't like interpret or speculate what you think is in there. It's just it is
Mm.
unknown. Period.
This reminded me of the one prose book we've ever read on the review show, House of Leaves. How that book describes the just infinite, impenetrable blackness of that void within the house. This is
Yeah.
the only thing I've ever seen with my eyes that gives me the same feeling as reading House of Leaves.
Right? Like you think your eyes would adjust to the light and you can kind of
Mm.
see some stuff in there, but nope, just pitch black. That's it.
Yes, yes.
Nothing else.
And everywhere you go. And of course you can imagine they are trafficking in shadowy dark places, haunted mansions, woods, old castles and things. But like even in just
Underground
an office
caves, yeah.
setting, yeah, these deep, intense shadows where like half your face is this sort of brightly lit, stark, uh, fearful image, and the other half is just pure shadow. And he draws everybody with these big eyes, like a lot of the human characters, because there are Hellboy and Abe and a number of non human characters. The humans have got these sort of big round eyes that always make them look haunted,
Yeah,
regardless of who they actually are, what their
absolutely.
situation is. Like somebody who's just has like a weird thing happening at their house or a seasoned BPRD agent. Their eyes are sort of drawn with the same sort of big, open fear to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the art as we all know is spectacular in this, and
Yeah.
that's like also partly what's so amazing is that I know as an artist, I'm sure Mignola can look back at some of the stuff he's done and just been like, I don't like that panel, or I
Mm.
would have fixed this one thing, but I think to most consumers of this story, it's so uniform. It just
Yes.
from start to wherever we are now in Hellboy, it has the exact same look, and it's just man, that's wild that it has that
What a,
consistency.
yes. What a choice. What a force of nature is the story of Hellboy and how it is presented to you. And the sort of blocky bluntness of the artwork lends itself to feeling like an old woodblock print. Like
Sure.
you described other comics as looking painterly. This one looks like I carved it and made a print of it, which also lends to the historical sort of folklore aspect of a lot of the stories it's telling. Like
Yep.
the way Hellboy is drawn, it makes him feel like as ancient and primal and like whispered about in shadows a force as Baba Yaga is.
Yeah. Even the idea of like carving something out is almost more
Yeah.
sinister, right? And
Yes.
dark than like, let me get some paper and I'll draw it, right?
Mm.
Yeah, there is, it's something, it feels physical in a weird way,
Yes.
um, which I think has a certain weight to the paper,
Yeah.
or
And like
weight
there's
to the
no
art. Yeah.
gloss. We've read other comics that I think look glossy, they look shiny. There's like color gradients and highlights and like artificial lens flares and things like that, which can serve other stories very well. But how this book looks is so specific to exactly what it is. Hellboy would not be Hellboy if he was drawn in any other manner.
Yeah. Even the like cover gallery at the end of these volumes, which we read all of these on Comixology Unlimited. Um, like it's neat to see other artists do like you've seen
Yeah.
on social media or stuff to like draw this in your own style thing, and
Mhm.
they'll take some artwork and redraw some character or some iconic scene from some anime or something like that. It's neat to see other people drawing Hellboy, but you're right. Often is like, it's not Hellboy though, right? Like
I
it's not what I
it's fun.
want from Hellboy, which is Mike Mignola.
Right. The cover galleries are fun. It is interesting to see at least the ideas of him encountering other monsters and creatures just for the one striking image of a cover. Like I think there's one where he's fighting like a selkie or something like that, some sort of murderous mermaid, which looks very cool. Or him fighting some sort of like a samurai ghost or spirit. I
Right?
like just
Yeah.
these little glimpses into all these things that feel like I'm certain that is a Hellboy adventure we just haven't read yet. Like you can see this character doing anything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's also funny to see characters at a distance where like there's this sort of blocky heft to the artwork. When you see them in the distance, there's like these little like lines where their feet just come down to points.
Yep.
It's very funny. Like being used to the physical presence of Ron Perlman on screen. And then you look at the comic and Hellboy has these like little goat feet. Like his feet are they're not Liefeld small, but it's funny. After me seeing Ron Perlman in probably giant boots or something. I don't remember specifically, but not this.
Yeah. Man, I see what else can I say about the art here that I really enjoy. It's just man, it's a blast to dig into. Like even if you are like I remember when I was younger looking at my dad's comics, and that's exactly it. I would just look at the comics. I wouldn't even read the stories or stuff like that, but just like be in awe of the artwork and stuff like that. I feel like Hellboy is a comic that really lends itself to that in a weird way. Like I feel like
Yeah.
you don't even need to read the stories to know what they're about and get the vibe that is Hellboy, which is neat. I also, if I could kind of segue to the like stories and the writing a little bit, something else that I thought was really neat is in the third volume when he's doing all of the short stories, there is like he would have like short little like paragraph long introductions
Yeah.
to each one.
I
Like
really
I wrote
liked
this
those.
in this time. Here's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And he had one that really struck me, and this was his like Christmas one, and he said exactly that. He was like, all of a sudden, it struck me. I don't have a Christmas story for Hellboy. And that stuck with me because I think I think about characters differently. Like if I were to come up with an original character, I feel like I need to weave together what their story arc is, what their whole life is, right? What this big long continuous story is. And I don't know if Mignola was thinking about Hellboy in that way. It seems like at least from that one small snapshot of, and then it hit me. I didn't have a Hellboy Christmas story. Like he's still in the early stages of
Yeah.
Hellboy here, and he's being like, I need a Hellboy for all seasons, right? For it's just like it really does lend itself to a character of this like legendary status, this mythological status of like, oh, there was this one time, right? And then you can just
Yeah.
create whatever story you want, right? I often put Batman up in that category of
Yes.
just like, there was this one time, this one dark night, and
Yes.
Batman did
Yeah.
XYZ, right? And you're just like, yep, that makes sense.
Right.
That fits.
Absolutely,
Same
he did
thing for
that.
Hellboy. Just like, and then one Christmas, Hellboy showed up, right?
One of my favorite of the short stories from that third volume, which I might recommend is like the first volume for a person to start with if they just want a little taste of Hellboy. I think having all
Sure.
of those shorter stories was a really fun sampler platter of everything that the character and the world can be.
Sure.
One of
Yeah.
them is a story that Mike Mignola says he wrote 2 pages at a time to be serialized in like Dark Horse Presents or something like that. He
Mm-hmm.
tells a lot about the format in which each of these stories was to be published in some publication outside of like a standard monthly issue or what have you. And he's like, so it's 2 pages at a time. So I wanted every 2 pages there to be some like interesting twist in events. And reading the whole story put together like that, I don't know if I would have picked up on that structure specifically if I hadn't been told about it, but it does give that story, which is the one about the changeling baby, and then as some sort of a deal, a bargain with these fairy forces. Hellboy is to take this like corpse of some sort of little gnome or brownie, or I don't know the taxonomy of all of the types of fairy folk, but he has to take one and like bury it somewhere. And he goes to all of these different graveyards, and all of them have like skeletons. They're like, no room, no room. And he's like,
No
great,
vacancy.
fine, I'll go to the next one. And that story's got such a fun, lively pacing that the other stories don't, which isn't a fault of them. It's just that they've got that sort of slow burn noir
More
tone to them.
monologuing or
Yeah.
exposition to
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was also my favorite of the short stories, because it like for a number of reasons. Yeah, there is always something happening, and it just kind of moves along with this pace that is exciting. Right? There's always something happening, and on top of that, it feels very much like a quest that you would see in a video game, something like The Witcher or something like that, where you go to a town and you meet some NPC that's like, "Oh no, my baby! It's not my usual baby. What happened?"
Yeah.
And then you have to like go investigate, and yeah, you get tasked with like, "Here's a dead guy. Go bury him at one of
Yeah.
these castles," and whatever route you pick, it's always the last one that you go to, right? And that's the one you bury him in. So it felt like another thing that I really enjoy. I like video games a lot. But then, yeah, with this, like, every 2 pages, something is happening. It felt it in the way that some of these villain monologues are just packed with references to things or multiple names of a certain character, like, you are Hecate, you are this, the moon, you are blah 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 blah. It felt like it was packed with mysteries or weird things to visually look at rather than read the words of, which also oddly fits. Like, I like this idea of hell. I like the idea of Hellboy investigating something and just kind of having to gloss over these other, like,
Yeah.
side eye really weird things of like, what is happening here? You know what? I can't focus on that right now. I have a
Right. Yes.
mission, right?
You're right. Which is lends itself to the short story where like the homunculi comes back. It's like, right. Homunculi might be the plural of it. There's only one. There is a single
Right, yeah.
homunculus. It's like, who's the deal with that homunculus that like Liz touched and gave it her fire powers? You're right. It's just like, we don't have room to deal with that. We gotta fight Rasputin. I can't think about a homunculus right now. Maybe
Yeah.
that'll come back in a further Hellboy adventure.
Yeah, and it like I think that also lends to some of the bureaucracy of the BPRD that I'm sure we'll get more into down
Yeah.
the road, of just like, what are their procedures, what are their protocols for
Yeah.
when things happen like this. And yeah, because it feels like him just being like, I'm here on a job. I just want to get
Yes.
paid and get over with it. I cannot deal with some strange floating rock, right?
Yeah.
We're moving on. Let's go.
Yes, that's not in my remit. That wasn't in my job description. You didn't pay me to deal with big rock. That is something I like about Hellboy, is that he has a job. He works for a company. It would feel very different if he was like a one-man crusader who sought out problems that he felt like he could solve. Instead, he is just assigned to go do things. And he's got these teammates. I like that you can always add new people to the mix that way. We know Abe Sapien and Liz Sherman from the movies, but there's that folklore professor. I think Katie Corrigan was her name. I don't remember her from any of the movies. Maybe she was there and I just fell out of my brain. Gonna have to rewatch those. But I like the potential that he could meet all these different people within his working life and have different relationships with each of them. And it lends to the sort of hard-boiled, bedraggled quality to Hellboy that he's like, I didn't ask to be here, but this is my job, and I know I am good at it. I know I am the person you send to deal with this, so just
Right.
let me deal with it, please.
Yeah. And like I mentioned Lobster Johnson earlier. I have no idea who Lobster Johnson is or what his
Same!
whole deal is, but I know he
the
exists
name
within
Lobster
the
Johnson.
world. Right,
Yes,
yeah.
I know one of my brothers has explained him to me. I can't recall who he is or what he looks like, but you picked up something that was lodged in the back of my brain. The name Lobster Johnson.
Absolutely. And like that I think lends it especially since Hellboy has been active since World War II, basically, or just shortly after, because he had to do some growing up.
Yeah.
Like, it lends itself to like who were the kind of paranormal teams either
Yeah.
before him or working alongside him while he's in, Eastern Europe, who's over there in Japan or who's over here in the United States, and stuff like that. He can come across those characters or have one kind of adventure with them, and then they go off and do their own thing, and then you can read the Lobster Johnson comics over here
Yeah.
if you want to know more. And yeah, I think that's also just the like, okay, I'm on my job, I need to do this one thing, right? I can't deal with everything. But yeah, I enjoy all of that. The last thing that I will say about the story about the changeling baby thing is, I also just like the kind of stupidity of Hellboy, like lugging around this dead
Yes, yes.
body and just getting stuck with him, and he's
Yeah.
just like, when can I sleep? Like, I want to, like, I'm dead. What's happening? He's just like, just shut up. I'm trying to bury you, right?
Right. And he has to carry him on his back. This corpse is like whispering in his ear, just hollering at him, and
Are we
he
there yet?
smells. Right.
It's the
Another
opposite
great
of
aspect.
Monty Python, right? It's the, like, bring out your dead. I'm not dead yet. And he's just like,
Right.
I'm so dead. Like, when are we gonna be done? I just want to sleep. It's the opposite of that.
Another great thing about Hellboy is, due to his sheer physical size, he will have to carry other characters.
Yep. Absolutely. Man, yeah. I think, yeah, to go back even further then and talk a little bit more about the Rasputin stuff. I think part of why, at least for you and me, why it hasn't stuck as much as I was kind of hoping is because of also what we've been praising it horror, right? It has such a distinct and unique
Mm.
identity from the
Yeah.
get-go that the world already feels complex and multi-layered, and we're kind of jumping in, and it feels like it feels like there's some history here that I don't know and I don't
Yes.
understand at all, right? Um, and I think that's actually a good thing. Um, and I'm sure we will kind of return
Mm.
back to this story or these characters and what it means and what it meant and how it affects everyone. And I think all of that will become more and more clear as
Mm.
we go on. Um, but yeah, was there stuff with the whole Rasputin stuff that stood out to you in Hellboy's origin?
I think it's cool that he's here to take this mysterious figure from history who is from like real tangible history. Like he lived like 100 years ago. We have photos of the man. He's not like a folklore character, but he lived such a preposterous life that he has become folklore. Like, just what was that guy's deal? Who was he? And so there's a lot of room where you can fictionalize this and make him a foe in your pulp horror story. I do
Yeah,
remember from
absolutely.
the various movies. I think this is in the Ron Perlman ones and the David Harbour one as well. The idea that Hellboy was created, was manifested for some dark infernal purpose that he denies. He does not want to live up to. He likes his life how it is. He doesn't want to be anything else than the Hellboy that he's been. And the concept of him being able to grow these magnificent horns, and he's like, no, I cut him off, I break him off. I've just got these like nubs, these like little Lego dots on my forehead. This is how I live. This is my mark of I have chosen my own destiny, and I'm not a monster. I am the person who investigates monsters.
Yeah.
I like that that is a pervasive. That anytime you're dealing with Hellboy, that's a major theme. It's here in these books. I've seen it in the movies before. I know that, and I like that story.
Destiny, avoiding destiny, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Can you make your own? But now I just have an image of someone at the BPRD like 3D printing a giant Lego and just slowly trying to stick it on his head. And you just see him like just straight faced, like look over with
I
this big old
and
Lego block on his head.
there's a note from Mike Mignola when we see Hellboy with the full horns, and then you see him break them off. That apparently up until then, people didn't realize like what those dots on his head were. And I'm
Right?
like,
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe because my first introduction to Hellboy was with the Guillermo del Toro movie, and to see it in 3D, that reads a lot more clearly that these were horns once, or they were supposed to be horns, but they are shorn down to these
Hmm.
little nubs. Like, I never thought of, oh, if you're just seeing a drawing of this man for the first time, that doesn't make sense to you what that is. That has to be explained.
Yeah. Which is an interesting reveal too, right? Because this also, like, despite what I just said, that like, oh, Hellboy Christmas story. He's a character that can have all these adventures. You just
Mm.
say one time Hellboy did this, right? And it makes sense. I think this idea, like this concept of breaking off his horns and filing them down, all of that stuff is kind of a hint at a much bigger story arc, right? There actually is this overall plot that I did also kind of say like he's not a character that does that, or that's how I would have thought of my original character. Um, so like he has both, I guess, and it's just nice. Like it's nice to know that it's going to be paced out,
Mm.
or in like a format that's maybe similar to like a sitcom or something. They keep alluding to some like thing that will happen down the road, but they never really get to
Mm-hmm.
it. I don't know, right? Um, yeah, it's interesting to see because I that's something I don't know if that's happened in Hellboy's history. Have they dealt with that destiny, that purpose definitively, and have they moved on, or is that still kind of looming overhead down the road? That's something I don't know.
Yeah, I do like the idea that anybody, any sort of supernatural force could come for Hellboy at any time and like try and call upon what he is meant to be.
Yeah, yeah. Scary thought for sure.
I want to mention briefly one panel that I took a photo of. I
Sure.
don't know how to screenshot on my tablet, so I take a photo of my tablet with my phone. But there is a short story that's sort of a Hellboy origin story where he goes to this like the rundown, abandoned like ruins of an old church and sort of hears the story of like a nun who like made a deal with the devil, and that's supposedly where he was born from. Those are supposedly his parents. So he's sort of walking around contemplating his origin story, and that story is told through the format of he's writing a letter back home to Abe while he's like
Mhm.
off on this trip. He's telling these things to Abe in the letter. Nice that they're just friends who write each other letters. They're not only
Yeah.
coworkers. I thought that
Pen
was
pals.
sweet. Yeah.
Pen pals from hell.
So the letter ends, that's what I saw. Did I learn anything? I don't know. Maybe. Can't say it made my day. Do me a favor. Let's keep this between us for now, all right? Okay. On a lighter note, I hear there have been new sightings of the West Virginia Mothman. That might be something to look into for a while. I'd dearly love to see a Mothman. Take care, HB. That's how I'm going to sign off all letters now. I'd dearly love to see a Mothman. Take care.
Peace.
Also, Wilkinson is out of the office. She'd dearly love to see a Mothman. Take care. We'll respond to your email on Monday.
Out of the office,
And
hunting for Mothman. Take care.
The concept of Hellboy saying dearly is also very funny.
Yeah, I mean that was something that I kind of remember from the movies is that he does have this crush on his coworker, right? And there is this kind of like romantic,
Yeah,
storyline
I
here, which we
was-
haven't gotten yet in these.
I was waiting
comics.
for that to get started, and I was like, is the Hellboy and Liz Sherman romance, is that mainly like, and reading this, I'm like, is this just not in here yet? Or is it something like Guillermo del Toro really wanted to do? And that's how it became part of those movies. I don't know yet. We're going to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, like I like this idea of humanizing these characters. Because that's like I just feel like between like the relationship between him and Abe and that friendship they have going, him breaking off his horns, like he has these things that give him this real kind of relatability, or just
Yes.
in these like grand scale things, like, oh, I'm pen pals with this underwater creature, and I am my real purpose is to like destroy all of existence, and my like all that stuff. But it's these smaller things, the decisions that he makes, that like makes him feel much more like a well-rounded character,
Yeah.
rather than just this like force of nature that works for the BPRD that hunts
Yeah.
these monsters. So I'm looking forward to more of that. That's something I hope we get more of.
Yeah, there's a lot of angles you can have here. I was thinking that it's interesting the makeup of the BPRD, that we have these like human like soldiers and military operatives. You have these creatures like Hellboy and Abe, and then you have Liz, who's a human who just has pyrokinesis. And I don't know if there's a full story on that. I don't know if this is a world of X-Men type mutants where some people just have powers. Like, what's that origin? How do people feel about her? As of yet, there's no sense of animosity between the BPR, between these different types of agents. Maybe there's interpersonal things like, I don't like my boss, he's annoying, but there's not like, these humans horning in on monster territory, or humans being like, I don't like that you make me work with these monsters. Seems like they are, at large, a united front against the greater evils of the world. So far. That may change.
Who knows? Who knows? Indeed. I kind of mentioned that. Yeah, I want to see more of the like smaller character moments. Is there stuff that was not in these first three books that you're hoping to see down the road as we continue reading?
Maybe not hoping to see, but just expecting to see, like things
Sure.
I remember from the movies, like the romance with him and Liz, and there's a more of an emphasis placed on his relationship with his adopted father. That is one of the first things we get in the first volume, but it doesn't seem to linger any sorts of feelings he has about the loss of this man who took him in and raised him. So I
Yeah.
wonder if we're getting more of that.
Yeah. I would like to see them kind of be a team. In a sense,
Yeah.
like we've mentioned all of these characters, and we've seen them work together on a mission, but I really do want to get a better sense of the team and the team dynamics. Because especially once you start to bring in these kind of character moments that I keep talking about, it can kind of affect how you view the team, and right? And if someone ends up mad at someone else, then the next
Yeah.
time they go on a mission, you're like, uh-oh, but Abe is mad at this. How's that gonna affect the right? And there's a bigger sense of stakes outside of the Baba Yaga's back again
Yeah.
with a giant army of zombies or who knows what, right? It's man, something might go wrong on their side. So I want that. I do want more like inside the BPRD and how that organization works. Like I do want more of that side of things. Something else that I remember I liked from the movies was also getting to see Hellboy's like living
Yes.
space, him and
With all
all
the
the little
kittens.
kittens and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is one of the most memorable things about that first movie to me, which is
Yeah.
the intro where I think you see like the summoning of Hellboy or whatever, and then there's that photograph of like all of those soldiers and military operatives and occult experts, and then like little baby Hellboy, and there's this like text on the screen that says, "This is Hellboy. He was summoned in this year, and he is now an agent for the BPRD, etc., etc. He likes television and candy."
Right.
Like they humanize him off the bat. He feels very much like a real person. And he certainly does here in the comics too, but yeah, getting to see him in his downtime, where he lives,
Yes.
what his interests are that
How
aren't
does he
fighting
spare
various
time?
ghouls.
Yeah. Absolutely. What else? What else? There was something else that I had in mind that I would have liked more of. I don't remember
Any
what I was going
particular
to say. I don't know.
any monsters or creatures or elements of folklore that you hope we get to run into in these future volumes? Any
Oh,
favorite cryptids?
well, that kind of reminds me of something else. So I like, because I don't have an extensive knowledge of Hellboy, one of the words that I keep going back to, or one of the descriptors of Hellboy that I keep going back to, is Lovecraftian, right? That's how I've always described Hellboy. And what I thought was interesting is that in at least these first two forewords that I read, that was reflecting on Hellboy and his influences, his impact on comics. Not once did they use the word
Mm,
Lovecraftian, except to actually say H.P. Lovecraft,
yes.
and like name him as a person. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was really really interesting because like that to me was just like I don't know much about Hellboy, so that's what it seems like to me. It seems Lovecraftian, like he'll fight some giant monster with
It
tentacles, some
feels
Cthulhu-like thing. But they
yeah,
kept mentioning Jack Kirby, and I was like, huh,
yeah, yeah.
I I guess they're right. Like that makes sense. This like wild sense of imagination and
Mm.
just the way these characters are drawn. They're so distinct and yeah, like yeah, it was just like I was not expecting you to mention Jack Kirby, but now that you do, I can see that, and you haven't mentioned Lovecraft once. I
I
guess I don't know exactly what all
I
is in these pages
I
here. What's happening?
Lovecraft, it means cosmic horror, and that's not purely like the look of various monsters. It's not just the existence of a monster, but it's the existence of a being that is so ancient or so large or so omnipotent. It's so extreme in a regard that your brain like can't handle it. You know, you
Right.
were looking at
Yes.
something that you were never supposed to look at. Like it's this sort of psychological like madness. Like that goes hand in hand with
Yeah.
here's a bunch of tentacles in that regard. And I'm not feeling as much of that cosmic horror here. There are these big, larger than life creatures. I love when they do have to fight the homunculus that grows stories and stories tall. It's just this like massive thing that they have to escape from, like causing earthquakes and breaking up the ground. Sometimes you get things that are kind of on the scale of that, but the emotion isn't there. It's still the more grounded noir, I'm here to solve a mystery, I'm
Yep.
here on a case sort of approach to it.
Yeah. Two things that I want to see to go back to your question.
Mhm.
Something intangible. Like I want to see
Oh,
him face off against something that he cannot punch, right? Which is the thing that we were like, just shut up. I'm gonna punch you and get this over with, right?
mm,
Like I want to see him deal with more like hauntings and stuff
yeah.
like that, which I think he mentioned he was like he knew the priest in the one short story with the wolves that they worked on an exorcism together, which that is still a little bit more
Mm,
tangible since it's a possession, but
mm.
still. Something like that. I would also like to see him investigate something that's a hoax, right? Something that
Ah,
is not actually some kind of monster or demon or werewolf or zombie or who knows what. It's just a normal person. It's right, just trying to scare people or keep them off of some kind of treasure or something like that, and it just kind of all this big hullabaloo just kind of turns out to be not much, right?
huh.
And see how he
Interesting.
reacts with that
Yeah.
stuff, and then yeah, to see how because I think even in that first Hellboy movie, like the opening scene is like right there in that subway, right? And he's there. There's normal people just
Mm.
commuting to work or who knows what, and there's these monsters. Like I want to see how the rest of the world kind of reacts to him and not these like smaller European towns out in the middle
Oh,
of
sure. Yeah.
nowhere that all have some kind of dark secret. They're all
Yes.
secretly vampires or right. Like
Yeah.
what does Joe Schmo think as he's just sipping his coffee and sees this big red monster run by
Mm.
and he's just like,
Mm.
you will never guess what I saw
Right.
today,
Yeah,
right?
what is the public's knowledge of the BPRD? Is it
Right.
like do they know
Yes,
Hellboy
exactly.
specifically? He's a very specific man. You see him
Exactly.
once.
Exactly.
Hellboy, it's literally his name, but it also feels like if you didn't know what his name was and you just had to describe him.
Some kind of the Hellboy. I don't know what it was. He was
The only
red.
difference is he would say hell man, hell fella.
Some hell
But
dude.
they met him when he was a boy, and they called him Hellboy, and the name persists regardless of his age. He's an eternal boy. I'm a big fan of the story of the golem from Jewish myth, which is this
Yeah.
large creature of clay, and you write what you want it to do on a little piece of paper and roll it up and like feed the scroll into its mouth, and then it comes to life and does your bidding.
Yeah. I also really liked this idea, which I think is a story that happens down the road. I don't know. I have my fingers crossed right now. This idea of a plague. And in these first 2 volumes, we see this like plague of frogs. And he's just like, why are there so many frogs? Right?
That was fun.
Right? Like I like that stuff where he's just kind of baffled by what's happening, and it's not like some giant monster that he has to face.
Yeah.
It's just the sheer number of some mundane thing that he has to overcome.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Mundane. Like it's the sort of baffling, annoying things that come along with supernatural happenings that are like not scary in themselves. Like you can imagine him fighting a ghost, and maybe the ghost is scary, but he's just so grossed out by all the ectoplasm that's everywhere, and he's like, now I have to deal with this. Now I'm sticky all the time.
God, this is never coming out of this suit, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm expecting. But yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say on Hellboy volumes 1 through 3 here. I had a blast. I like these a lot. Good reads.
These will be nice to spend the fall with. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to pull up Bingo, which I don't think
Bingo.
we have any update on this one either. But I feel like by the end of this, we might get some treasure map, right? We might get a villain with a pet or some kind of like cat and mouse game, some locked room mystery. Who knows? But yeah, I don't think we have a update for Bingo this week. But
not today. We will next week.
Hellboy. Ooh, yeah. Indeed. Okay, so when we do our end of the month specials, we like to do our recommendations for the first time we cover something and the last time we cover something. So this is the first time we've covered Hellboy on this show. So Melissa, what are your recommendations for people that enjoyed this? What else might they like?
I want to recommend the Dresden Files books by Jim Butcher. This is an urban fantasy series that has like 17 novels and like 2 like hefty short story collections.
There's
I read
also a
all of
bunch
these that were. Yeah, I haven't even. There was a Sci-Fi Channel TV show for 1 season. I think there's a tabletop role playing game. I read all the novels that were out back in 2018. I read 15 novels in a row. That was like all I did the whole year. These are books about Harry Dresden, professional wizard. In a world where magic is real, where there are wizards who are trained, but they sort of keep everything secret. Like people, like the everyday person shouldn't know about this. It's just going to be a hassle. They're going to ask too many things. Like it's going to get out of hand. We keep this on the down low. We keep this between our secret wizard societies. Harry Dresden works as a PI in contemporary Chicago. You can find him in the phone book, and he will use his magic abilities to like do little odd jobs or things like, you lost your wedding ring, I can find it for you. Magically, I can find this thing. And it starts where every book is a different case that he's working on in a very sort of hard-boiled noir vibe. Everything's written in the first person. You're inside his head. He's very frustrated. He's very tired. He's very snarky. they do exhaustion so well in the Dresden Files books.
Interesting.
Like
Okay.
they really lean into, this is a man. He's got incredible powers, but he is a man. He gets hungry, he gets tired,
He gets
gets
hangry.
lonely, he gets horny. Exactly. Like how he is feeling, like his physical and mental condition at any time has such an impact on like how he is working, how he is trying to solve a problem or fight a threat. And there's so much mythology. It like grows and grows to where, yeah, like the first like 6 or 7 books are like an individual case, but then it's like the Wizard Council needs you to do this thing to fight this foe, and it's like all mythology and like giant world ending battles like every book.
Interesting.
Halfway through. He fights a lot of, they're all recognizable mythological characters, like a vampire, a werewolf, a necromancer, a zombie, etc., etc. But they get like very detailed into, this is how this works in this story. So you're not going to have to learn a lot of complicated new things. After I read all of these books, I tried going back to some high fantasy novels, and I'm like, this is too many entirely fictional things I'm not familiar with. I want to go back to Dresden Files, where it's like, okay, I have to learn your rules for a vampire, but I know what a vampire is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy those books very much. Pick one up. The first one is called Stormfront. They're quite popular. Like, go to your local like discount bookstore and like you could pick up an old paperback for like $4 or something. It's really worthwhile. Yeah, very interesting main protagonist and huge cast of very fun supporting characters, which is one of the joys of a long-running series of, that guy's back. I remember him. I never thought we'd see him again. If that's a feeling you like, you do get a lot of that throughout the Dresden Files.
Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff.
And this is, I guess, less of a recommendation and more of a, hey, this reminded me of. In the first story where they go to that dilapidated manor that's like falling into the lake, there's a panel of that manor that looked just like the painting House by the Railroad by Edward Hopper, who's the painter of Nighthawks.
Right.
You know Nighthawks. We all do. But he's got quite a storied collection beyond that. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on like art history lately. So like reading this, I thought of several painters.
Good. Yeah.
Go look at some paintings. But Edward Hopper, not to this degree, as with Mike Mignola's artwork, but has a lot of like very intense, striking shadows. Everything's very stark. Everything feels sort of lonely and eerie. And look up House by the Railroad and you'll see, this is an image I know. Even if I've not seen this painting before, this feels like it is fed into, this painting from 1925 went on to influence like the house in Psycho, the house where the Addams family lives, and all of these things. And there is a video, there's a YouTube channel called Great Art Explained, and they did a really fun video called Edward Hopper and Cinema that talks about this painter coming up during like the teens, 20s, 30s, during this rise of popular cinema and how that influenced him and how his art style influenced cinema in turn. And it's a really cool look at frames from a bunch of different movies that have pulled stylistically and structurally from Hopper paintings.
That's interesting. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's see here. Stuff I would recommend. So I like off the top of my head, there's a video game that I would love to recommend. One called Control. And this was a game that I really, really enjoyed. You are you're showing up for your first day on the job at the Bureau of Control. And what's interesting about the building is that only the people that are supposed to be there can see the building. The Bureau of Control investigates all of these like paranormal events and stuff. specifically objects of power. For example, maybe I give a bunch of power to this Mountain Dew Baja Blast that I have in my
Mm.
hand, and it becomes this kind of paranormal oddity. And then they will have to go and contain the Baja Blast and stuff like that. But you get there to control, and it seems like everything has gone wrong. And you then have to, like, on your first day, have to, like, take over control of the Bureau of Control. You're now running the place. You are investigating, and there's just weird things happening all over. But it is the, like, paranormal investigation slash bureaucracy of the, like, BPRD that is also kind of like in control, because you're in this big like government building. So I would recommend that. Um, Something else I would recommend is Alan Mower's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen
Oh yeah.
comics. I remember when the movie of that came out, which is
Mm.
actually a fairly underrated movie.
Hmm.
Think it got slammed when it first came out, but it's not bad.
We
Um,
had a whole era of these. I feel like Hellboy, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Van Helsing. There's
right.
maybe like a 6 or 8 year stretch of lots of sort of pulp supernatural tales like this.
Absolutely. But the comics of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I forget who does the artwork on those, but the art in a sense feels very much in conversation with Hellboy. Just in the way that they draw the characters, they do these like kind of darker, flat colors.
Mm.
And then the stories that they tell, as well as the characters that they pull in, right? It's Jekyll and Hyde, it's Dorian Gray, all sorts of stuff. So you have I was about to say wacky group of characters, but I don't think that's the right word. Not at
Frankenberry,
all, right?
Count
Yeah.
Chocula, Fruit
I would
Fruit.
read
They're all
that
here.
too, you know?
The League of Extraordinary Cereals.
Yes, absolutely. Make it happen. Um, but yeah, that I think also had kind of a similar darker tone to it. Um, I would also, there's a Batman story called Batman Shaman. That
Huh.
was the first 5 issues of the Legends of the Dark Knight series. I think you can get that collected pretty easily, but it reads really, really well in tandem with Batman Year One, as Batman Shaman kind of takes place, or the it majority of the story takes place just after the events of Batman Year One, but they're flashing back to stuff that happened just before the events, like right before he gets home to Gotham, um, and it has this kind of similar like supernatural horror vibes to it. There's Batman, or I guess not Batman yet, it's Bruce Wayne is on this expedition finalizing his training out in Alaska. And something happens, he's hurt real bad, and he gets saved by this shaman, who tells him this story about this bat. And it's like this story is part of the reason that in Batman Year One, when the bat flies through the window and he's like, "It's an omen," is why he
Mm-hmm.
recognizes it as an omen. He's like, "This, I just heard this story. What's happening
Mm.
here?" But yeah, I think that would be an interesting one to check out, that I think gives a different side of Bruce Wayne Batman that is more on, I want to say like gothic horror, but it's not gothic
Sure,
horror, but
yeah.
like that kind of like Hellboy mixes all kinds of like cosmic and gothic and pulp and noir, and it just, yeah, it's all there in one big ball of comics. So
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend. But yeah. Okay. So for next week, we already have what we are planning to
Yeah.
do picked out. So Melissa, tell us about what we will be covering next week.
Next week, we're going to talk about season 1 of True Detective. True Detective is an anthology series. So season 1 is one contained story, and then season 2 is a different story, and season 3 is a different story. I know this is huge. This in the years since this has come out, this is from like 2014 or something. I have not seen it yet. I really wanted to cross this off my list. That was my theme of pitches last week. TV shows I really feel like I should have seen by now. Crime Edition.
Yeah.
And you made the wise choice decreeing, out of everything I pitched you, True Detective must be seen.
Yes, absolutely. At the start of September, we like to do what we call Shame-tember. And while we usually pick movies, and we will do two
What?
like proper Shame-tember
Yes.
weeks
Yeah,
after
that's what
this. But this kind of counts too, right? Like
yeah. A TV Shame-tember, truly. Yeah. And then, yeah, our second and third episodes in September will be you and I pitching each other lists of movies that are on our lists of shame, either culturally or very specifically to ourselves, things that we're like, why have I not seen this before? I need to get one of these off of my list. That's what these weeks in September are for. And then the final week in September, back to Hellboy.
Yeah, we will be checking out Hellboy volumes 4 through 6 at the end of September. So be sure to check us out then too, if you want more Hellboy. But yeah, that I think kind of wraps us up for this week's podcast. I'm super excited about True Detective. I have seen this show. I've watched all 3 seasons. But yeah, if nothing else, yeah, season 1 has to be watched. So
Required.
we'll get that. Who knows? We might come back to True Detective down the road at some point. Who knows? But yeah, True Detective season 1 for next week. That's on Max, right? It's up there, and it's only what, like 8 episodes?
Yeah,
long?
8 hours long. It's not a huge commitment,
but it is a good one for sure. So yeah, with that, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
I'm at WilkyWit on places where you may find me. I've got a Twitter and Instagram I have not updated in very long, but friend me on Discord. Discord's how we do this. I'm always on a Discord. You can find me there. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, which I host with one of my Hellboy loving brothers. We talk about old kid shows you feel like only you remember.
There you go. Good stuff. If you want to follow me, I am at Yo Kyle Springer on most of the social media places. If you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are typically at the Whatnauts. If not that, then we will be at the Whatnauts official. So yeah, go look us up. Go like, share, subscribe. We've got plenty more videos for you guys to check out if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, this has been number 268 of the Whatnauts review show. We will see you all